Yeah, so it will get a little more technical. So efficient DevSecOps is more than like writing source code. We will touch basically on everything, or like many different ideas if my thing works. I'm Michael. I work as Senior Developer Evangelist at GitLab. I go as DNS Michi online, which is DNS MICHI. But it's not about me. I will share some things which GitLab is currently developing. So this is the legal disclaimer. Some things might be in development or not be released in the future. But generally speaking, like what is DevSecOps? And I thought of, where are you in your DevSecOps journey? So like maybe you started adopting with planning, with code creation, with automated testing, CI/CD, maybe even security in there. And then deployment, continuous feedback, basically everything. And probably you are somewhere, or there are certain tasks where I say, well, on a daily basis, this exactly one thing feels super inefficient and I'm wasting hours. And maybe I want help, or maybe there's a way to get more efficient in that regard. So I thought of, okay, if we can make that happen, maybe AI can help us. And I thought of how to tell that story, how to get started. What is the typical thing that happens to me as a developer or as a DevOps engineer? I get something assigned. So there could be a new feature being developed. I need to work on the backend code. It involves front-end documentation. Basically, I'm reading, or I get an issue assigned, which takes 100 comments to read, to understand the description, because the description is not updated yet. But the development iteration or release target is in 2 weeks' time or 2 months' time. Everyone is like super stressed out about it, and then you need to like read it and summarize it. And I don't have time to scroll over endless issues, to be honest. And one of the things which can help make this more efficient is summarizing the issue, summarizing the description, summarizing the discussions to get immediately an overview, what needs to be done, what needs to be fixed, what should be the expected result. And from there, I can continue my development journey. The screenshot is an example of how it works in GitLab, providing an AI-generated summary, which is one of the things to make it more efficient. But there's more in development. It's not just assigning an issue and starting to write code. We need to see the road ahead. And typically in development, I see certain road blockers. So I'm still an engineer myself. I need to know how to clone, for example, a Git repository to start work on the code, use the CLI or the command line, or use my development IDE. Maybe I want to add CI/CD configuration. I have no idea how to add that. Project templates, Git ignore for different programming languages would be helpful. I typically always use Google for that, to be honest. And adding, for example, the right license. So picking MIT license template, having a README MD that explains what the project is doing, and everything which is helpful as a developer. For once, I also often cannot recall the Git CLI commands. So like tagging a release, git tag -m something. And typically this leads me to like switching the context, Googling how the command works, maybe even like opening the manual pages for Git on the command line, but it takes a while. And one of the things our engineers implemented into GitLab CLI is explaining, or I can ask about Git commands. And when I'm fine with the explanation, I can actually execute that command. And the screenshot shows how to check out a new feature branch and continue working on that, especially then also syncing it with the remote, or the Git server remote, which requires a -u or --set -upstream is the long version. And this helps me because I can like ask AI, please explain Git commands to me. The other thing I can do is, and this is also an example in GitLab, I can have a conversation in a chat, similar to ChatGPT and other AI chat toolings around. there's a way to just ask GitLab Duo chat in the screenshot. You can access it from the help menu and start simple. I want to get started with a Python project. Please propose the structure and best practices. This is all I need to get started with a new Python project, for example. I get some instructions, some best practices, and then I can decide how to continue in my development story, creating a new project, for example. Now that I've gotten more efficient, let's start writing code. And I have been working in development for like 20 years. I learned programming without internet. I only had my Visual Studio MSDN library installed from 6 CD-ROMs and whatnot. But it's often time consuming. We're always learning as developers. So I feel confident in designing architecture, implementing robust algorithms, distributed things. And then someone reminded me, hey, C++ 23 is out. And I'm like, okay, I understand C++ 11. What are the differences? And maybe there's a better way to implement things or even get better at programming. On the other side, if I learn a new language, it's hard to understand certain specific algorithms or know the documentation, where to find the structures, the interfaces, APIs, and whatnot. And if someone says, please implement that in 2 weeks' time, it might lead to learning under pressure, making human mistakes. And it generally can feel a little intimidating and like failing or not being able to deliver the results you are assigned to. And so I started looking into efficient pair programming. So getting context-specific code suggestions. In the beginning, I was like, okay, this is a great suggestion. Do I need to switch the context now? And I mean, in the first like 5 minutes or 1 hour practicing, it felt a little like that. After a while, it became super comfortable to provide instructions, like even multi-line instructions, to say, well, this should be my algorithm. Maybe use this variable input, use a specific structure, and then provide me with the source code, where as an experienced developer, I might know the algorithm, but I still need to look up code. And this just makes me more efficient. And the great thing is it acts as a documentation too. So the more source code comments I'm writing, the better it gets documented. And hopefully the algorithm generated with code suggestions is also then better. And it's also a great way to learn. So I started looking into learning Rust using GitLab Duo code suggestions, which is also a great way to expand knowledge and also being able to not just generate boilerplate code, but real actual algorithms that are also efficient. So just before this meetup, I started, because I like challenges, I started a new project and asked code suggestions to create a web server with Flask, adding some entry points for hello, metrics, and health. And I get the proposal or the proposed code using tab. I can accept it, continue writing, get a new proposal, and so on. So it's actually a learning adoption journey. Another example in the screenshot shown here is a pretty print function to debug log something. I know it's JSON dumps something, but I cannot remember the indent and things. So this can also be helpful just to instrument a suggestion and even like get it and not being required to write it on your own. Or the other example shown here is reading all file paths in a directory into a list. I roughly know how it works in Python, but I would never have guessed this specific algorithm, to be honest. So this was just like 1 minute or like 10 seconds versus 1 hour looking it up, thinking debugging doesn't work, going back and forth and so on. Yeah, and the other language I tried, like mentioned before, and there are blog posts linked on the slides, is learning Rust. So getting to know the different data structures, I know certain things from C++ and Rust feels familiar, but there are differences. And having a playful recommendation or suggestion also enables learning in a more efficient way. But also not being shy of saying, well, I want to implement an actual project, which is an RSS feed reader, which actually worked in the end. Like after spending 3 days learning and writing the blog post, how to learn it, which was a little like too much work, but in essence, I learned a lot how Rust works with unwrap, with different data structures and whatnot. And it helped me consider it for maybe future cloud native projects or other things that I'm interested in. Looking a little over the border with Go or C++ in the past. The thing is, not all the code that I'm writing is written by me, and I probably don't remember what I wrote 10 years ago, and it was probably not the best code, to be honest. But I also want to have the ability to explain code. So maybe I'm joining a new team. In the following situation, I need to maintain a new code base, fix everything in weekly bug fix sprints. Then there's an algorithm, there are no comments, no unit tests, and no documentation. So basically developer hell. How long would it take to search on the internet, write tests, intentionally break the code to figure out, is every input, every use case technically working? Can I maybe change the line of code? It potentially, like changing a line of code with untested things usually introduces 10 different other bugs in my experience. So the idea is, maybe let's ask AI to summarize or explain what the code is actually doing. And in this example, I wrote some code using code suggestions and then used AI to explain it again, which is kind of AI inception to some degree, but it's possible with any type of code. So in the screenshot, you can see the GitLab Web IDE. You select the source code, you ask GitLab do a chat to explain it. You get a summary on the left-hand side. You can continue writing code on the right-hand side, which I think is super important for me as a developer to not switch the context somewhere else, but rather stay in my IDE. And this time in my browser, I could also do the same in Visual Studio Code on my desktop, and ensure that I can continue coding, I learn, and I'm also able to ask a conversational question in the chat and continue learning and iterating, which can help make me more efficient as well. Now let's imagine the source code is ready for review, and we created a merge request. The problem is, well, I was working on backend changes. The front-end changes also need to be reviewed, and the docs team needs to review as well. The team is large or huge. Whom should I assign for review? The previous maintainers are not on my team anymore, and it takes quite a while to find the right person on the team to review the merge request. So maybe even like sync meetings to figure out who can review that, which is not efficient in my opinion. So one of the things, or one of the features that GitLab provides is suggested reviewers. So it knows about the changes being made over time. Basically a history of every request, if you will. And GitLab trains a local large language model kind of in the background. So it's trained on the instance with project data, doesn't leave your instance. So it's not shared with anyone else for data privacy reasons. And it's helpful to get a proposal who can review that and immediately assign it. I'm done as a developer. I can continue working on the next feature, on the next bug, whatever comes to mind. Now, switching sides, doing a merge request review, it's sometimes you get a review being assigned as a to-do, and it just says implement backend version 2. The difference is like a long list to read. The description is basically fixing issue number, and the issue itself is huge as well. So is this a short context switch? Maybe it takes the entire afternoon to review. What should I be doing about it? And one of the things that GitLab came up with is so-called merge request summaries inside the merge request, so everyone can see that, similar to an issue summary. but also in the to-do list entry. So if you're familiar with GitLab, and I'm a heavy GitLab user myself, in my to-do list, I can see, hey, I should be reviewing something for the GitLab CLI, some tests and code changes. And the summary in that line or in that list provides with the context, this is a race condition, I need to test that, and so on. And I can plan my day and say, okay, I'm reviewing this tomorrow. I have two hours time. And I'm not switching the context just now and just continue my work, which can also help make things more efficient. Then there's the thing with tests. And I'm honest, I don't like writing tests. But it's needed. So testing application code, adding good test cases, like have these special inputs, the extreme inputs that break everything. So like -1 or provoking a division by 0 or specific other things. Simulate something that causes a regression or maybe even avoid it. And also verify the functionality and external interfaces. And everything like verifying that is super hard in my experience, especially in distributed environments, microservices, and everything else. So it would be awesome if we could just generate tests for specific code snippets. And in the screenshot, there's an example with GitLab. Wrote a Flask web server and asked AI to write some tests for that, which I can then like copy paste in my test or my unit test source code file, and then continue working on the merge request itself, because test coverage is required in my workflows, and I need to do that or need to add that before I can assign someone for review. Here's another example which I worked on earlier. For creating a math library, for example, showing different inputs or extreme use cases, which can also be helpful to ask AI what could be an extreme case for testing specific source code. And then we always have the problem, security shifted left, and basically everything shifts left onto developer teams or developers. And in this situation, a security incident is going on. It affects customers running the software in production. It takes quite a while to analyze and understand what the security vulnerability is actually doing. And the CV description has a memcopy function buffer overflow, but what does this mean in the context of the application code? Maybe there's a timing attack with file handles, and usually I struggled with that, or I struggled in my previous life as an open source monitoring tool maintainer, fixing those things as well. And I was like, maybe there's AI, or maybe someone could help explain that, and explain, or asking AI to explain a vulnerability can be super helpful. And I tested that with an example for like a timing attack. So opening a file, not checking for specific inputs. And AI was able to explain that, why this happens in a more reasonable or more readable form, but also provide me the ability to understand how to fix that. So like using a specific flag for the function call for fopen in order to prevent that in the future, which then helps me fix the vulnerability fast. And I have learned how to fix it, which I can then remember hopefully in the future, or I ask AI again, which is super helpful in my opinion. And last but not least, I mean, there are many, many ideas to help make DevSecOps workflows more efficient. Debugging CI/CD. So waiting for CI/CD is one story. Debugging it when it failed is another story. And potentially when there is a long, huge stack trace with 10 pages of scrolling, it can be a little confusing or a little hard to understand and say, well, what is there, or why it doesn't deploy. And so one of the features in GitLab is root cause analysis to ask AI what is the error and how to fix it. And this is similar to other prompts and other conversational chats. it uses the specific context, and in the screenshot it shows there's a parsing config parser import is missing actually in the source code. It explains why this happens, and then also provides an example fix and says if you copy that, or if you implement it this way, the source code will actually work and the CI/CD pipelines will continue. Then the review cycle can start, or maybe even like the deployment and so on. So these have been quite a few examples how this works, especially like this works today with GitLab Duo. But the thing is, there's more to that. So there are more ideas around, and we're always looking for ideas or for features or for like inspiring everyone, not just GitLab. For example, intelligent, can I speak English today? Dependency management. So when, for example, a security vulnerability always comes from a dependency, maybe there's a way to ask AI to replace that dependency. I don't know if it's possible, but I would love to have that. Or if I'm a product owner and I have a requirements list in my issue, how do I verify that the feature that is being released to customers is actually implementing 100% of the requirements? Could be a way for AI to understand the source code and match that with the requirements lists, or have guided CI/CD configuration editing. Or I talked to one of our product managers today about observability and error tracking. Maybe there's a way to explain error tracking entries, or maybe even like incidents or observability data and correlate everything, which I think would be my welcome to paradise, to be honest. And there's more to that. So I think my ask for you is to think about your most inefficient task in the DevSecOps lifecycle, experiment how AI can help, and join the conversation, create product proposals, join the community, discuss that to help make it better. And last but not least, I also was thinking about how these large language models work and how to make them more efficient or make their usage more efficient. Because we can just use one, like ChatGPT or whatever is out there, or we use open source and train our own models, or we are using best-in-class LLMs for each specific use case, which is something we do at GitLab, but maybe others are following the same approach. And last but not least, on a personal note, I saw the KubeCon North America keynote. So I attended it, and Priyanka showed the live demo using Ollama.ai, which is using open source LLMs running Kubernetes. Spoiler, it also runs on my MacBook, which is amazing. And I was wondering if we can run that in Kubernetes, we can also learn prompt engineering for better results. Maybe we can create our own AI programmer based on open source LLMs. I've seen that some folks already started that. Maybe we can also implement all the DevSecOps efficiency shown in this talk. Would be interesting. And from these learnings and proof of concepts, we can inspire vendors and communities for using AI to implement more efficient workflows. This is basically my dream. I also submitted a talk for KubeCon about this topic, so I would really want to learn more in the future. These are the resources or the slides if you want to access them. I will also share them on social media in a bit. Yeah, and that's it. Thanks.